My name is Elaine Faithful, and I serve as the president-elect for our congregation. I want to say a special welcome to those who are home, probably snuggled up under a warm blanket. But the special thank you has to go to all these good folks that are sitting out here today who braved the weather. Welcome. If you are a guest with us today, I don't see any. I do see one person over here. Do you mind standing and introducing yourself?
Sure.
Okay.
So my name is Matthew Kennison. This is my father here. I'm just visiting for the holidays.
Matthew, we're so glad to see you. Anybody else? Well, good. Welcome. Welcome. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space. Some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces we might be ashamed of. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us have already opened our hearts, and some of us are not quite ready to do that yet, because our hearts have gotten a little beaten up and might have forgotten how to trust and be open. Your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised, no matter how sad. And wiser, we hope that you will leave here wiser than when you came in this morning. We welcome you here. It is our tradition each Sunday morning to stand and to greet each other, and I invite you to do so now. And open in your gray hymnal to 205. We'll be singing Amazing Grace this morning.
Oh
Our opening words come from the German existential philosopher Paul Tillich. I have to tell you, this guy tore me to pieces in divinity school. His way of thinking of, what is your name? Oh my goodness, Karl and I were talking about it at the beginning. He's quite a extraordinary philosopher, but getting through his ways of thinking were very complicated. Anyway, this is Paul Tillich's writing. Grace strikes us when we are in great pain and restlessness. It strikes us when we walk through the dark valley of meaninglessness and empty life. It strikes us when we feel that our separation is deeper than usual because we have violated another life which is dear to us, or from which we are estranged. It strikes us when our disgust of our own being, our indifference, our weakness, our hostility, and our lack of direction and composure have become intolerable to us. It strikes us when, year after year, the longed-for perfection of life does not appear, when the old compulsions reign within us as they have for decades, when despair destroys all joy and courage. Sometimes, at that moment, a wave of light breaks into our darkness, and it is as though a voice were saying, "You are accepted. You are accepted. Accepted by that which is greater than you, the name of which you will never know. Do not ask for that name now. Perhaps you will find it later. Do not try to do anything now. Perhaps later you will do much. Do not seek for anything. Do not perform anything. Do not intend anything. Simply accept the fact that you are accepted. This is grace."
PJ? JP. JP is going to light the chalice for us as we say together our words of affirmation. We gather together in the spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
Excuse us, folks, we forgot to light the servant calendar.
And JP, you might as well just come on back up here. Give me a workout tomorrow. All right, come on.
Is there a green light?
No, it's not the green light. It's not
The bulb tells green.
There we go. All right, can I ask the children and our youth to come up here, please? I've got two things for you this morning, everybody. Although we might have struggled a little bit with it and all of the confusion about Thanksgiving and whatnot, we remembered that this Sunday is the first Sunday of Advent. Do y'all know what Advent is? Advent means to come, or to arrive. What is coming up in about a month or so?
Halloween.
Oh, you're helpful. Christmas, that's right. So Advent in the Judeo-Christian tradition, the Christian tradition in particular, is the first 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas, right? And usually what they do is they light candles, one every single week, so you can tell you're getting closer and closer to the big day. What we have done in many years is to have Christmas trees instead of candles. And what we have done every year is each Sunday we light another tree, and that tree has a theme. And our first theme this year for the beginning of our Advent season is the theme of hope. And so every year I pick ornaments to put on the tree that kind of reflect that theme. So what have we gotten in here?
So we've probably got like homemade ornaments, like eco-friendly ornaments.
Homemade ornaments, yes.
So when you recycle them, it's better.
Yes.
For the environment.
Yep,
You've
we-
got to prevent pollution from happening.
We try to do that, and we've used these ornaments for a number of years, and I'm surprised they're holding up as well as they have.
I
So
do too.
pick one up. What have we got in there? Right. Those are stars, right? Why do you think a star would be a symbol of hope? Yeah. No clue? Well, do you ever wish upon a star?
I have before.
Some people do, right? There's a whole song about it, wishing upon a star. So when you make a wish, it's kind of a hope, right? And traditionally, in the Christian tradition as well, one of the first things that appeared that told the story of Jesus' arrival, or the fact that they were waiting for his arrival, was a star that appeared in the sky. So we have stars on our tree. And Talia, can you pick out the other ornaments? What are those big ones there? You know what those are? Fans? Pick an animal. They're not fans, they're butterflies. That's right, they're butterflies. Why do you think butterflies might be a sign of hope? What do butterflies come out of in the spring? A cocoon, right? So they're kind of starting with a new beginning and a hopeful brand new start, right? So that's why I chose the butterfly. So I'm going to ask you guys to grab a couple of these ornaments and go finish off our tree, and then we're going to light it up, and I have a few little words for us to say. And then we'll hear our story. The big butterflies, you can just find a nice big tree branch and just let them sit on there, okay?
I can help
You can put them anywhere you want.
Okay, and then I'm going to step on the magic button here on the floor and light our tree up. So this is our first Christmas tree. It is a gift from the East, a gift of the air. Its work is a vision of hope and prophecy, a vision of that yet to come. As the dawn bears this gift, may we embrace it, may we protect it, may we nourish it, may we work to bring hope to those around us in the cold, dark winter. And I'm going to ask you guys to just have a seat down here while I tell this morning's story. Now, this morning's story comes from a man by the name of Richard Bernstein, who is a former financial services executive who now works and volunteers in the nonprofit sector. He directs camps for foster kids, tutors at a local middle school, helps run a nonprofit where local teens cook for cancer patients, cool stuff like that. So this story is called The Mayonnaise Jar. And I just happened to have brought along a mayonnaise jar as a prop. It's actually veganaise. So this is the story in Richard Bernstein's words. I'm a camp director. Each summer, I lead 4 camps for children with chronic illnesses: Crohn's disease, colitis, skin disease, celiac disease. We bring together children with similar issues and allow them to be campers first and patients second. They swim, boat on the lake, play soccer, do arts and crafts, go through the ropes course. In short, they experience overnight summer camp with other kids just like themselves. Every year, I try to introduce something new. Sometimes these ideas work, and sometimes they're a flop. At celiac camp this year, I thought I'd create an opportunity for the campers to say thank you when someone did something nice for them. I'm talking little things: holding a door open, finding someone's swim goggles in the cabin, minor things that happen many times a day. So the first morning of camp, I found a large plastic jar in the kitchen, labeled it the mayonnaise jar, and put it on the piano in the front of the dining hall. And I'm not going to dare put it on the piano over here. So I put pencils and a few pieces of paper next to the jar and told a couple of counselors that it was a way for their campers to say thanks if someone did something for them. At lunchtime, there were 2 anonymous little notes in the jar. Thanks for lending me your sunscreen. Thanks for finding my hat. During lunchtime announcements, I told the camp about the mayo jar and read the notes aloud. I thought a few other campers and counselors might want to join in, so I added a few more sheets of paper, 20 in all. I figured that would be enough for the rest of the day, maybe the rest of the week. I stopped by the dining hall later that afternoon to meet with a few counselors and check to see if the mayo jar had been used. To my surprise, the stack of paper was gone, and the jar was beginning to fill up. So I added 20 more sheets of paper. At dinner, I again checked the jar. Turn the microphone off. At dinner, I again checked the jar, and again the paper was gone, and the jar was practically full. Before evening announcements, I sorted through the notes and found dozens of expressions of thanks for all sorts of things. Being a friend, cleaning a table, sharing a water bottle, making a snow cone.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it does sound delicious, doesn't it? 40 notes in the space of 4 hours. I read every note during dinner announcements. Some were cheered, some weren't. But I was struck by the number of kids that took the time to acknowledge that someone had done something for them and to thank them. After dinner, I put 50 pieces of paper next to the jar and sharpened the now dull pencils. The next morning at breakfast, the paper was gone and the jar was full. The notes described different things: sharing a teddy bear, telling a bedtime story, thanking the kitchen staff for a great meal. Again, I read every note during announcements, replaced the paper, and continued with camp. By the end of the second day, we were averaging 60 notes between each meal, almost 200 notes a day. This from a camp of 95 campers and 40 counselors. And during the third day, I began to notice a change. The camp seemed to take on a different feel. Campers and counselors seemed more conscious of doing things for each other. The process of saying thank you appeared to be generating acts of kindness and consideration. Several times during the day, there was a line at the mayo jar as kids waited to write their notes. Maybe it was my imagination, but it seemed that as the week progressed, normal and expected small incidents of mischief and misbehavior at camp had almost vanished. There were no cabin pranks, no bullying, no harsh words. It was as if expressing gratitude had created a shift in how the camp operated. The jar continued to fill up, I continued to read the notes during announcements, and the paper continued to run out. As I removed the notes from the jar to organize and read them, others quickly took their place. The jar was never empty. By the end of the week, there were between 600 and 700 notes, from the scrawls of 8-year-olds to the thoughtful comments of longtime counselors. The stack felt like a treasure. Here were hundreds of documented acts of kindness that were acknowledged simply because these campers were given the opportunity to express thanks. Some of the notes were clever, some were simple, some were revealing, and some moved me to tears. Here's some examples. Kim from Pine Cabin, thanks for encouraging me on the zip line. Thank you, Chelsea, for teaching me how to make a lanyard. Thank you, Riley, for always smiling. It makes me happy. Thanks, Joan, for understanding my weirdness and being weird with me. To all the staff, you guys made my dream come true this week. You made me proud to be gluten-free. I am humbled by the actions and wisdom of my campers and counselors. I will never run camp again without a mayonnaise jar.
I offer this prayer as we enter meditation. It's written by a favorite of mine, whose name I'm going to forget again, Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear for my life and my children's life may be, I go down and lie down where the wood drake rests in the beauty of the water, and the heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought or grief. I come into the presence of still waters and I feel above me the daylight blind stars waiting for their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Thank you, Corey. Our reading this morning comes from the World Magazine. It's written by Chance Hunter, and it speaks on grace. As a child, I was raised in the Christian tradition. I learned that being a good Christian meant being nice, above any other virtue, or as they say in the South, being sweet. It was the highest compliment to say of someone, well, isn't she sweet? Being sweet was a great excuse for avoiding other virtues, like telling people hard truths or calling them out because they were hurting someone else. Above all else, being sweet meant not rocking the boat, making waves. It meant bringing a friend a casserole when a family member had died. But it also meant not confronting that friend when they had a growing problem with alcohol. For ministers, it meant preaching nice sermons. That meant dealing with the sins of their members, where a comfortable distance could be pushed to the edges so that no one felt abused or set upon by any criticism. Not confronting the congregation about, say, gossip couched as prayer requests about other church members. Being sweet was a small virtue. There is small grace in being sweet, but much of being sweet lacks grace altogether. That brings us back to the word grace. What do we mean when we say grace? The lead singer of U2, Bono, once said, "I am a sworn enemy of saccharine and a believer in grace over karma. Karma is the consequence. What goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. If something bad or something good happens, it's because you deserve it. Behind a belief of karma is a belief in justice. It's because you deserve it. Behind the belief in karma is a belief in justice. It's the great cosmic balance sheet. Every debt will be paid. Every merit will be rewarded." Where'd my water go? Now I believe that karma has its place. We need to be always aware of the consequences of our actions, being especially mindful of the most insidious form of consequences, unintended consequences. But we've all hurt enough people in our lives that if karma is at all there, our karma scorecards will look pretty bleak. It is all we can give, if all we can give is karma, everyone loses. Gandhi put it very simply. It will be if it's an eye for an eye until the whole world goes blind, which is why we should go on rooting for grace. So what is grace? Grace is getting more than what we deserve. It's not winning the jackpot or winning the lottery. That's luck. It's not grace. Instead, it's grace. Grace is finding an unexpected moment of peace while taking a walk. Grace is learning something new and amazing, something new and amazing about a friend you've known for years. We encounter grace when we hear a song that touches you in unexpected ways, or when we make a difference volunteering because we signed up and we showed up. Grace can feel like a wave of relief or a spike of pain, but it always leads us to a path of hope and more trust and more love. Grace is always there, waiting to happen. Grace is very patient and polite. Grace never imposes itself upon us. Grace can surprise us, and it doesn't force itself upon us. Grace is a willing partner and a constant friend, but it never invades. Even when our experience of grace feels overwhelming. This is at the core of the Universalist message. There is always more than enough grace to go around. There's no amount of good deeds you can do. There's no magic prayer you can pray that will guarantee you will receive grace. We receive grace not because we deserve it, but because the universe is fundamentally a generous place. That there is life at all is a sign of grace. That there are people like us walking around the earth after billions of years of biological accident, that is surely grace. Grace isn't just something we receive, it's also something in our power to give. In the early verses of the book of Genesis, it says that we are created in the image of God. I don't know what you think, but I imagine God is life all around me. If it's the nature of God to give grace, then it's my nature too. When we are most like God, we are most like God when we are being graceful to one another, when we make room for the presence of another, whatever the consequences. Amen.
Each week we take up an offering which is both real and symbolic. This support to UUFC and our connections within the community beyond these walls. The morning offering will now be given and received with gratitude.
I did not fill out a green card, but if you will allow me, I spoke with Leslie and Mike Heffernan, and Danny is sick with COVID, and her son is sick with the flu. So they are all quarantined right now, but they send their blessings and hello to all of you. Martha Alexander has a joy or concern, Martha? 11 us, okay, it's a joy. 11 of us joyfully sat around the Alexander Thanksgiving table. 2 sons, 1 daughter-in-law, and her mother, and 2 grandchildren, and 3 friends and us. Benedetta, I have our Papa home for Thanksgiving. Good for you. This is a joy from Heidi Campbell, but a big challenge, okay? I'll be having my left total knee replacement on December the 14th at Oconee Memorial Hospital, and then hoping for 1 week in rehab, just like a year ago with the right knee. Good girl. We'll be thinking about you. And Kathy Crane, UUFC, there we go. Barbara Strop's amazing work was a delight for us to experience at Westminster's Art Gallery. Barbara's creations are displayed beautifully among other splendid pieces from mostly Oconee County artists. Go and see them. I would also like Karl to put in a stone for all those joys and concerns that people are holding close to their hearts. Those who are here and those who are at home, may you feel and know our blessings. Thank you. Amen.
Good morning. Grace. Grace is a word that phonetically promises beauty and nobility and lingers in our memory when we experience it directly or subliminally. Dictionaries define grace as poise, elegance, blessings, and forgiveness, and often refers to received blessings that are unearned. After describing the vast dimensions of grace, I will explore grace that is received, grace that one shows toward others and oneself, and grace that is lived or expressed. Grace can lie in form and motion, as in the graceful curves of some human bodies, in the rounded arches and splendid spires of medieval cathedrals, such as Notre Dame, and the flowing curves of the Sydney Opera House, and in the aerodynamic lines of modern cars. Graceful motion can be seen in dancers, athletes, and in the flight of soaring eagles, the explosive pounce of lions, and the lightning maneuvers of fleeing antelopes. There are men and women whose form and motion are a feast for the eyes and a delight to the mind, whether in the drawing room or on the athletic field. Images that come to my mind include the actresses Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn, the actor Cary Grant, Miss America contestants, dancers Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, ballet dancers Mikhail Baryshnikov and Margot Fontaine, figure skaters Osana Bial and Scott Hamilton, as well as the sculptured muscular bodies of gymnasts and football players, presented in graceful motions of running, jumping, twisting, turning, catching, with exquisite control of their bodies. My list tells my age, and the young must make their own. These genetically endowed individuals may possess personalities that express a graceful kindness to those around them, reflecting the gratitude for the gifts nature has bestowed upon them. And yet this expression of grace as kindness toward others is not limited to any class, race, refined ability, or culture. One can see this graceful bearing toward others in ordinary men and women as a reflection of their gratitude for family, friends, vocation, or religious faith. Wikipedia tells us that in Greek mythology, the charities or graces were 3 or more goddesses of charm, beauty, nature, human creativity, goodwill, and fertility. The poet Hesiod names 3: Eugela, splendor or fertility; Euphrosyne, mirth or joy; Tulila, good cheer or blooming. And they were depicted as either naked or clothed, depending upon the period of Greek culture. This brings to mind the grace that can be found in human celebrations, as in the blooming bride, the joyful union of marriage, the mirthful child, and all the holiday festivals celebrated with family and friends. But there are other theologies beyond the pagan and the secular. There, but by the grace of God go I, reflects a Christian and Jewish theology that God dispenses favors or curses, and the predestination beliefs of some Christian sects, where God determines before birth who goes to heaven or hell. While this theology may raise our ire, as we saw in the reading earlier this morning, it is a delightful irony that the author, in describing the attributes of grace, called forth 1 Corinthians, substituting the word grace for love. Nevertheless, the natural world exudes this reality. There, but by the grace of nature and nurture, go I. The roll of the genetic dice determines whether we will be born with handicaps or extraordinary physical or mental gifts, or prone to illness or health, while the accidents of our birth with respect to parents, communities, and nations may say a great deal about our opportunities and the conditions of our lives. Beauty, brains, and brawn rule the world. It is this reality that religious values and theology seek to challenge. When Jesus said, "You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me," alluding to his eventual crucifixion, he superficially mirrors the modern ethos, where for many the focus is on acquiring wealth, power, or careers in sports, the arts, or science. But Jesus was also referring to Deuteronomy 15:11. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed towards your fellow Israelites, who are poor and needy in your land. This obligation to others is memorably expressed in the Hebrew and Christian Bibles. Before the New Testament, there was Cain's cynical reply to God's query about Abel's whereabouts. Am I my brother's keeper? Which is the foundation upon which many religious values are built. Answering Cain's question, Jesus says, "To whom much is given, much will be required," acknowledging that grace received is paid forward in gratitude with actions that help others. For the Christian, Christ's crucifixion provides the grace of salvation, which in gratitude the believer embraces Jesus' request that, "Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of these, the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me." We all express grace or fail to do so when we experience unpleasant interactions with the human world or with both the living and non-living physical world. When I encounter the perversity of the universe, I have no capacity for grace. Some of you may roll your eyes and say, "Karl, how can the universe be perverse?" Being an experimentalist and no theoretician, I would reply, go and do a few experiments. For example, take a 100-foot extension cord, attach it to a leaf blower, and count how many times it catches on something and you have to walk back to release it. Or drop a nail or a pin on the floor and determine how hard it is to find it. Or break a fingernail and count how many times it catches on the fabric of your clothes. I could go on, but I rest my case. In these moments, when I lack all grace, I often find great joy and salvation in seeing how many naughty words I can say in the shortest time. And yet, our negative experiences blind us to the blessings that come our way. For several weeks, my truck was growling, and I ignored its groans. When Ron and I returned from a kayaking trip to Lake Jocassee, he insisted on looking beneath the hood and found a pulley for the main belt stuck. When Ron took the pulley to Advanced Auto to buy a new one, the clerk marveled at the story and befuddled said, "You drove 60 miles with a stuck pulley? Boy, are you lucky the belt didn't break and leave you stranded." Clearly an example of the universe's blind grace, in this case both unearned and undeserved. If we take the time to be aware, we may find that we are often blessed by grace as abundant as the lilies of the field. How they grow, they toil not. Where Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. There are hurricanes and tornadoes that harm us, but also rains that water our flowers and crops, the sun that warms us, the moon that teases us, and all the rest of the living world that sustains us and graces us by its very being. And yet, how often do we say grace before a meal, expressing gratitude for the bounty of the earth, thereby dispensing with a sense of entitlement? In many sayings of grace before a meal, there is an apparent lack of grace. These rituals often bless the food by offering thanks to God, to the human hands that grew or prepared the food, and to a supporting community, but glaringly fail to express gratitude to the animals whose lives were sacrificed. Then there is the grace that we extend to ourselves, which includes acceptance of who we are, forgiveness for our failings, and responding in a positive and productive way to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. I am deeply moved by the calm and grace voiced by the condemned man, Meursault, in Camus' The Stranger, on the night before his execution. Quote, "It was as if that great rush of anger had washed me clean, emptied me of all hope, and gazing up at the dark sky, spangled with its signs and stars, for the first time, I opened my heart to the benign indifference of the universe. To feel it so like myself, indeed so brotherly, made me realize that I'd been happy and that I was happy still. To be happy, Camus notes, we must not be too concerned with others, meaning, I assume, in their opinions and judgments of us. My wife Janice used to tell people, Karl is like a rose, pretty on the outside, thorny underneath, best experienced from a distance. Reminding me of a personal story about this community. This is a story that I often share to express the underlying hope of a beloved community, but it is also a story of grace. After public comments one Sunday morning, I approached a fellow congregant. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and then in a gentle Southern voice, she said, "You know, Karl, I disagree with almost everything you said, but I'm glad you're here to say it. You're weird, but you're our weirdo." The tone of her voice and body language were congruent with her words, and I experienced a sense of grace in being loved and cared for as a member of the community that was unearned in view of her disagreements with my words and ideas. Clearly, sweetness and grace can be compatible. Although I am generally hostile to all human institutions because they unfailingly violate the individual, I feel a special attachment to this community because when failure or disagreement does occur, there is often a struggle to find acceptance for one another. I have too often been asked, Karl, why do you continue to go to the fellowship? I come because over the years, the community has accepted this curmudgeon, this nerdy child asking inconvenient questions, this gadfly, or as some might say, this provocateur, or one who likes to poke the bear. Over the years, despite my curmudgeonly personality and thorny expressions, I've been graced by this community with acceptance, and for this, I am grateful. Thank you for accepting me, and thank you for accepting each other. So what is grace? It is many things, as I've noted, but perhaps most importantly, grace is a special form of kindness flowing from a profound appreciation and gratitude. Grace, thus experienced in the gifts and blessings we receive, both deliberately and accidentally, can lead us to respond to the world more gracefully in thankfulness and with kindness. May grace be upon you. May grace be within you. May grace flow from you into the world. And now I think we do the hymn, right? So will you please stand and join me in hymn number 17? May we go forth open to the grace surrounding us and gracefully express through our actions in the world the gratitude of our hearts for the blessings we receive.